Hey everybody, this is John Lemesney. This is the customer and the service, and I'm here with Sean.
Hey John, how are you?
Say hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing great.
And Zach, how are you doing, Zach?
I'm good. How are you doing, John?
Fantastic. So Zach is our special guest tonight, and of course in this podcast we talk about customer service. And so in addition to views that Sean and I usually share, we're going to get Zach's point of view. Zach Skaggs, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you think of when you think of the term customer service?
That's a loaded question, man. Well, I am currently the director of happiness for the WP Ninjas. We're a company. We make a form building plugin for WordPress. But I kind of started my foray into customer service several years ago. It's funny, a lot of acquaintances of mine were kind of going off and specializing in different areas, and I always felt like I never really specialized in anything. And I kind of had this crisis, and I was thinking, man, what am I good at? Like, what is my one skill that I can say, like, that's the one thing that I know well? And just through thinking about it and some different situations and scenarios that came up, I realized that I'm a customer service expert. And it's weird for me to just call myself that, but it's been a long road, and I've learned a lot. I have a really unique perspective on customer service. Several years ago, I started just in basic tech support, and actually just in my high school back in like 2001, and that rolled into me being at university, and I became an RA, and I got trained in conflict resolution as an RA, which is kind of an interesting thing. That was probably my first official training that applied to customer service. I worked in call centers. I worked at Amazon for several years, and man, Amazon, they really drill a lot of customer service knowledge and expertise. And the really cool thing about working there was I also learned a lot of production methodologies, things, good business practices and things like that, and I've kind of learned how to meld that and fold it into kind of my customer service view.
Incidentally, given what's going on in the news right now with New York Times and Amazon, I hope that you'll talk a little bit about your experience with Amazon and what your reaction is to that.
No, absolutely. You want to talk about it now, or?
Yeah, I was actually.
Yeah, sure.
I was going to ask the same question. I was thinking about it this morning in the shower. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved Amazon. It was rough at times, right? It was really challenging. I had a different perspective. Working in IT there is a little bit different. I worked in the warehouses, but I worked in IT at their warehouses. And it's kind of a middle ground between kind of the really high-level stuff that goes on in Seattle and the kind of lower-level nitty-gritty of the day-to-day stuff there. But I loved it. It was intense. I started in Chattanooga, and then I got moved to actually their busiest warehouse at the time in Indiana as a technical support engineer. And it's crazy. It's the kind of atmosphere that some people really thrive in, and then it burns other people out. And I think that's why it gets a lot of negative press, because I think the people that it burns out especially are more inclined to talk about that. But it was definitely very intense. There are definitely times, especially around holidays, where we're working 60-hour weeks, and it's rough. It's a little crazy. 60-hour week at Amazon is a 12-hour day in the warehouses. You work 5 12-hour days. So I mean, it was crazy, but I learned so much about customer service. I don't know if you're familiar with the Amazon leadership principles.
I am.
Yeah, they are phenomenal, and leadership really is graded on all of those. Like when we did our annual review, I would have to grade myself according to all 14 principles, and then my manager would do the same, and then we would compare notes.
Did you get the opportunity to do it back, like a 360 review?
Yes, actually, and that was encouraged. A lot of things about Amazon, a lot of people think when they think of Amazon, especially in the warehouses in my area, because they have 2 of them, they kind of think of just the warehouse drone, that you're just kind of a robot and you just go and do everything they want you to do. And sometimes that's the case because that's needed. But one of Amazon's leadership principles is actually disagree and commit. It was part of my job description, but part of my annual review was how often did I disagree with my boss and put my foot down about how I thought we should do something instead. that feedback is very valued all through the company. There's so many opportunities for employees to pass feedback up the chain, and that's one of the ways like I would review my boss on those same principles. Now he wouldn't grade himself, and then I compare with him. He would do that, with his supervisor. But yeah, I mean, it was really, really intense sometimes. I remember on Black Friday, one of the computer systems went down in our building, and it was the database that drove all of our conveyor belts. And we had a bunch of employees just staying around doing nothing on Black Friday, and it got really intense, and the pressure's on, and you're talking, you're calling vendors, and you're dealing with people, and your GM's breathing down your neck, and you got to stay until it's fixed, and stuff like that happens. But I loved it. Like I thrived in that. I know a lot of other people that I work with that were really put through the ringer, and they were really stressed out, and a lot of them felt almost broken to an extent, especially when big projects came through. But I never really heard anybody that I was there, even at the high levels that are getting talked about in these articles, say that they just hated it. I think for the most part, it's a really great place to work.
That's good to hear. I mean,
yeah.
through my research on Amazon that I've done is, I've had a close friend of mine who's been up for multiple high-level jobs out at the at headquarters in Seattle, and so I was curious about what it would be like to work for Amazon, and through my research, I've never encountered sort of the negativity that we've been reading about recently at the level that you're speaking to. In that kind of regional, maybe even a subsidiary level of Amazon. All the negativity and complaints and stuff that I've found in my research has always kind of been applied to the headquarters, working in headquarters in Seattle. Back at the mothership, so to speak. So maybe being removed from the aura of Bezos helps you out a little bit.
And that's possible. A lot of the people that I did work with worked out of Seattle, but they might have even still been removed a little bit from that, because I worked a lot with our networking teams and development teams. And I definitely know some of them felt the pressure, but I never heard anything as negative as what is coming out now. But it's definitely possible that I just wasn't exposed to a lot of that.
Hey, Zach, I have a question about your experience in Amazon. Do you
Yeah.
feel like you felt empowered by the company? Do you feel like you had agency to act on your own?
Yes, actually, and it was strange because for me at the time, that was one of the first jobs I ever felt that way, and so it was actually difficult for me to get into that mentality of, oh, I can make decisions now.
Yeah, having ownership is unique.
Right, and it's again one of the Amazon leadership principles is to take ownership of things. And the day kind of came where I just realized, hey, I need to be the decision maker. Business is on the line right now. Customers are waiting. I can't get a hold of someone, especially. It's time to just go. We're just going to go with it. And that is an attitude that is rewarded at Amazon. Another leadership principle is bias for action. And that's saying, hey, you know what? You might not necessarily do the right thing, but bias on the side of action. Do something generally. So yeah, one of my favorite stories about working at Amazon is I worked very briefly at Volkswagen right before I started working at Amazon. And my first day at Volkswagen, I was sat down and I was told, hey, while you're working here, you might see some processes that you think can be improved upon, but just keep your mouth shut about it, because you'll eventually find out there's a reason we do things the way that we do them.
Ooh.
And that was a big red flag for me right off the bat. My first day at Amazon, which was about, it was a couple months after my first day at Volkswagen. My first day at Amazon, I was asked what I thought about some new IT processes that they were passing in the building. And I said, I'm new. I don't even know what processes you're talking about. I don't know what the current processes are. I don't know. He said, and they said, but you worked in IT before. How well do you think this would work here? And so it was crazy to me on day one, I get to have input into how that warehouse is going to run when every other job I'd ever had actively discouraged that. So.
Right, and I'm sure that Sean and I have talked about the most dangerous phrase in the English language, which is, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And companies that are able to look at a process and give somebody new eyes, with somebody who has new eyes, the opportunity to say, well, but have you thought about this? It's like a great opportunity to find out that something needs to be changed early on.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of my core philosophies of customer service too. It's one of the things. It's actually one of the reasons that I was hired here at the WP Ninjas is because they were primarily developers and designers, but they didn't have a good customer eye for things. And it was difficult for them to see the product the way that a user might instead of seeing it the way a developer might. And so I've tried to pull in a lot of those things into our development process here because it is very important, and we recognize that you have to know, you have to always be willing to innovate. It's very important.
And by the way, I just want to say I'm a fan of the products that WP Ninjas puts out, and a huge proponent of WordPress. So thank you for the work you do.
Oh no, thank you. It's great. It's a lot of fun. I've really loved it here. So
you typically go through stories of customer service in our and welcome.
Thanks.
Go through stories of customer service where we have great stories and we have really negative stories and usually have some critique. And why don't we start with Sean this week? And Sean, what ideas or stories do you have about customer service that you'd like to share?
So I wanted to kind of continue our conversation about home automation we talked about last time, where I opened the door for you for home automation. My understanding is you bought some Philips Hue lighting. Is that correct? John, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Or is it true that you bought Philips Hue lights or not? We couldn't hear your answer.
I did buy Philips Hue lights. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at them right now, and the light that is illuminating me right now is just a regular light. Just because I have the Hue lights on so many automated processes that they change from time to time based on if I took a picture or whatever.
Okay.
So I had to set a static light that wouldn't be electronically modified.
Okay.
But I love my Hue lights, and I'm glad that they are compatible with the other system that we have talked about.
Right, Wink. And how about you, Zach? Are you playing in the home automation space at all, or not?
Not a whole lot. At our office, we do a little bit. We've got some Nest thermostats and some Dropcam cameras. I guess Dropcam is now owned by Nest.
Yes.
And so we use those, but I don't really have a lot of home automation stuff myself.
Okay. All right. So, but at least you're familiar, and especially Nest. I mean, Nest is that's like the big boy of home automation, and luckily Wink has been a great platform from the Corky company to kind of tie Nest and many other kind of home automation networks together, like a working cohesive ecosystem. And so I actually just made a big purchase a couple weeks ago to extend that out, and that was an Amazon Echo. And I actually, when the Amazon Echo was first announced, I got to say I was on the hate train. I thought it was probably one of the most.
I was not. I love that thing. I don't have one, but I'm excited that you have one. I'm excited to hear how it worked.
So, I mean, I think out of the gate, it was probably in my opinion, one of the most undercooked and dumbest gadgets that I've seen in a long time. However, because it was cloud-based and it was a speaker as opposed to a device with an operating system, the development was really able to improve at a rapid pace over a period of time. So after it came out initially, when you needed a special invite to buy it, I stopped paying attention to it, and I thought it was, dead on arrival. It would go away. And so fast forward to about 3 weeks ago, I'm at my friend's house, and we're smoking a brisket for the first time, for his birthday, and we had to have very precise kind of timings to be checking the meats, in the smoker to make sure that the wood chips were good, that the meat itself was moist, and there was a lot of stuff that we had to do, and we ended up cooking it for about 14 hours. And the way that we were managing all these alarms and time check-ins and stuff was using my friend's Amazon Echo. And it was really kind of my first experience with the Amazon Echo, and so obviously we were using it directly with the timing, and he was showing me a lot of other capabilities that it could have, and he also is another person I convinced to buy into the Wink platform. He had some other networks. He has Philips Hue, and he was using initially a Logitech home automation bridge that he replaced, I believe, with the Wink, and so he was showing me all this home automation stuff that Wink had. And I was blown away. The fact that I could just be anywhere in my house and just speak, to turn on the rooms in the family room, or the lights in the family room or the kitchen or whatever, and it would do that was in my opinion, it was amazing. And the fact that the microphone technology in there is so advanced that it can hear at a distance and hear clearly was just blowing me away. So I picked one up, I set it up in my house, I tied it into the Wink stuff. It's changed the way that I interact with my home automation. I initially bought Wink has a panel that you can mount on your wall with a touchscreen, but it has very weird electrical wiring requirements in order to get it to work. And my home does not seem to have an outlet or a light switch that had the wiring needed. So it's been sitting in a box unopened, factory sealed, since I bought it a couple months ago. And so I decided to get the Amazon Echo to replace, to basically take the place of the panel, and I returned the panel. And I've been happy ever since. So it's an amazing extension of my home automation network. I've been using the the news function where you basically say, hey, what's going on in the world, and it gives you a blast of information. It's a curated blast of NPR and BBC News, and I gotta say, really incredible product. The app support has been phenomenal. Just another, I don't know why I never doubt Amazon. I'm an Amazon fan. I got the Prime. I've been using Amazon for a bajillion years. But they have some misses. That the Fire Phone was a miss. And there's been a couple other devices down the line that maybe weren't hot out the gate. And I thought this was another one of those weirdo devices, but I was wrong. And it's not often that I change my opinion on things, but here's a prime example of that, and I'm happy I did.
No pun intended.
That's right.
It was actually kind of cool when I worked at Amazon. It was about a year and a half ago. They started pulling people in off the warehouse floor in the offices, and they basically just handed everybody a script. And we were just supposed to read the script into this microphone, and they didn't tell anybody what it was for. And then several months later, Echo came out, and we kind of
It still has that. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, Zach, but when there's a mobile app for iPhone and Android that ties into it that basically manages the Echo for you, and there's actually a portion of the app where they want to improve. You can improve the voice recognition of your voice and how you pronounce words and such like that. And it's literally like you're reading scripts. And I went through just one round of it, and it probably took me about 5 or 10 minutes to do one round. So that experience that you went through, it seems like it's still going on even now with the Echo app.
It's actually interesting too. I've been tinkering with this software called If This Then That. This service called If This Then That. And
we talked about it here a few times.
It ties into Alexa as a trigger.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool. I don't have an Echo, so I haven't been able to try it. But if I had one, I would definitely be tinkering with that.
Well, remember I just said that my hue lights change according to whatever. Like if I take a photo on Instagram, that's because of If This Then That. Like I have all those recipes set up.
Yeah, I think there's also some Wink If This Then That compatibility too.
There are. It's in there for sure.
Yeah. So Zach, it sounds like you got your foot in the door. It's time for you to pull the trigger on maybe getting a Wink Hub or something else, or maybe a light bulb or two.
Yeah, it might be. I would think about getting a Nest just because I think it'd save me so much money. I have an old house that's old and drafty, and I think the Nest alone would probably save me enough money to start actually investing more into home automation stuff. But
yeah, I mean that's a good. I gotta say, to be honest, just to go off topic for a second and talk about that for a second. When I bought my house a couple years ago, it's a home that was built in 1951. And when we moved in, it had the old school Honeywell dial thermostats on the wall. And so I bought a programmable thermostat and set it, to the EPA recommended, program. And I gotta say, since I've been working from home, I'm not using the program at all. I basically keep the house set at a temperature all day, every day. That's it. One temperature. I don't. At night I don't make it cooler, or during the day, I don't do any of that anymore. And I gotta say, this summer, I'm saving about $100 to $200 a month with my air conditioning bills, just keeping it at one flat temperature as opposed to programming it like the Nest or other programmable thermostats do. So, just a little word of warning for you before you go plunk it down that $200 for that Nest.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I wanted to say in response to Sean's story was that I love the Echo as an idea. And of course, like so many other things, my only restriction about it is its proprietary nature, like that it's not editable. And so I was looking in the open source world for something like this, and I think I may have found something to build on top of Raspberry Pi that would do the same kind of a thing and would tie into If This Then That and some other things.
Well, best of luck on that journey, John.
I'm looking forward to that journey. If I can avoid using a proprietary system and use this open source system instead, I certainly will. So, Zach, why don't you tell us your story for this week?
Yeah, my main story is probably going to focus on Desk.com, their Salesforce product. Being a customer service manager, I'm always on the lookout for the best tools that I can give to our organization and to my agents, the techs that are under me, to provide great service. And I did so much research. I did really extensive research into lots of cloud-based ticketing platforms. That's basically what it is. And Desk came out on top on paper every time. Just by far biggest feature set. I was talking to their salespeople, and they were all awesome. They were great. We had several conference calls. They showed me the product. I was like, yeah, I'm sold. It was way more expensive than any of the other solutions, and I fought real hard here to kind of go with them because I could justify absolutely paying the extra cost to have the extra feature set. And we got them, and man, it has just been a headache ever since. On paper, they should be the best, but we've just run into bug after bug after bug, and I've messaged them about each one that we've run into, and the answer tends to be the same every time. Oh yeah, we're able to reproduce that. We're looking into it, but then nothing ever gets done about it. Or one time it was a bug with it wasn't a bug. They actually intentionally broke a feature in their admin panel because users were doing it wrong. And that frustrates me immensely, because from my perspective on customer service is if your users are doing it wrong, maybe you need to rethink the way that works so that they don't do it wrong.
Exactly right.
Right, yeah.
But basically what they did is they don't allow you to set up your Desk.com account to accept web traffic to a custom domain name until you've already flipped your CNAME, which basically means that you're forced into downtime if you want to point anything from your domain to them that's already live.
Right.
And I messaged them about this, and I said, hey, we have a live site. We have traffic on it literally right now. There's not really a good time to do this. Can I just configure everything on your end and then flip it over? And they told me no. And they told me no because so many people did it wrong that they just got a lot of support requests for it. So they just intentionally broke the feature that allows you to do it. So basically just for people who don't know what they're doing. And it was immensely frustrating, But that's consistently the kind of interactions that I would have with them. And I did a lot of complaining, and one of the things that they did that was good, I said, hey, look, I know a lot about ticket tracking systems. I've used a lot in my time. I know how these features probably should work. I said, if do you have any way for customers to give you feedback on how to potentially improve the product? And they didn't, but they did do several conference calls with me, and they started putting like higher and higher level people on the calls, which was great. It was awesome. But I started to realize it was more a facade of customer service than actual customer service, because yes, they were making me feel heard, but it became obvious that I was only they were only trying to placate me. They weren't trying to actually improve anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's crazy.
For example, our CEO was using was using Desk, and he was answering an email interview, right? Because it's all basically just manages email interactions if you really just want to boil it down. And he spent about an hour and a half typing it out, and then their autosave feature deleted everything that he had done. Right. And that's a regular thing, happens every day with me and my agents. We're typing out a really long, thought-out reply to a customer, bam, gone. Wow. And in one of these calls, I mentioned it, and their lead developer was on the call, and he said, "Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that happened to you. That's been a known bug for a while, and I thought we fixed it." And I was like, I can assure you that it's not fixed. And he said, well, I'm going to look into that right away, and we're going to get that taken care of. It happened to me again this morning, and that was 3 weeks ago.
Oh no.
So it's just, they're working really hard to kind of have that facade of customer service and let me know that I'm being heard, but the actual product, the actual issues that I'm having aren't being resolved, and that's forcing me to look for an alternative. But man, I tell you what, on paper they really are the best. Like if their features work the way that they said that they would work, I mean, they wouldn't even have nothing could even come close to them. But I'm going to have to go with kind of almost a less worthy service because the features that they do have aren't working. Just really basic stuff,
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a headache. I know it's kind of specific to my use case. I don't know if a lot of people can relate to that, but man. It's been a difficult journey with them over the last couple months.
I think that's the interesting thing about customer services. Even if you don't necessarily understand the details of what's going on and why it's not great customer service or why it is great customer service, the attention to detail or the attention and effort put towards coming up with a solution is where customer service has that common, laying down mulch, or we're talking about changing the domain on a website.
Yeah, that's true, and that's true. But yeah, it's they give the appearance of caring, but when the things aren't actually getting changed or fixed, it becomes kind of obvious where their priorities are, if that makes sense. So it's been kind of my biggest frustration with them. And then I mentioned earlier the post office. I'm just generally frustrated with them. I've had 5 or 6 packages in the last couple of weeks delivered late. The most frustrating thing was I had some diapers that were due to be delivered, and at 5:30 a.m. I got a message from Amazon that there was a delivery attempt and that I was not there, and so I was not there to sign for these diapers that I've never had to sign before, and so they didn't deliver them. But I was actually awake at that time, and nobody came, and it was 5:30 a.m. And I called them to check on it, and they said, they didn't know anything about that. But it's the way it appeared, it was almost like someone was just like, I don't want to put this in the truck. I'm just going to say I tried. I don't know. But whenever I've called them, I've been met almost with hostility. Like, hey, can I just come pick this up? No. Oh, okay. Well, why? It's not sorted. You just can't come and pick it up. I'm like, well, it says it was delivered yesterday in the middle of the day. No, you can't come pick it up. I don't know. Just lots of frustration with my local post office. I don't know if that's indicative of USPS as a whole, but my local post office has been very frustrating.
Well, we've dedicated entire episodes to my trials and tribulations with the post office here in the Lawrenceville, New Jersey post office, and so you're not alone. And I would recommend, if rather than recant the saga my wife and I went through many years ago, where we were given a package by the post office. I picked a package up at the post office, and we were given the wrong package in a major error by my post office. I strongly recommend you check out that episode, because it is a story so wild that you would almost think I made it up. But yeah, I mean, I totally sympathize with that, because I'm somebody, I run a side business out of my home where I sell used video games, so I rely on shipping and receiving all the time. Whether it's UPS or FedEx, but my primary shipment method is really USPS. I use Priority Mail exclusively because, one, you get free shipping materials from the website, so I don't have to pay for boxes, and two, the rates are pretty favorable. But anytime, FedEx, UPS, they try to deliver a package and they miss you, you can still get that package that night. Do you mean you just gotta wait until the truck is back to the house? You call them up, you get it, no problem. In Postal Service, it's like anything that you want to do outside of their bounds, it takes an extra day. And like today, I'm expecting a record I got from Germany, and because it's coming like Deutsche Post or whatever, it's considered registered mail, which means I have to sign for it. And I know for a fact, I'm home now. I work at home every day. I'm home. So I know when the mail comes, I hear the truck, and I know for a fact that the letter carrier did not want to get out of the truck and knock on my door today. So I got the pink slip in the mailbox saying they couldn't deliver it, and now I got to wait a day before they'll try and redeliver. It's such a systemic. They don't care. They're in debt. They don't. The people are government workers. They're lazy. I'm sure there are people out there that are incredible. I think we just lost John. But here he comes. And but that's not the case. It's not the case. And I don't know. And you wonder why they're in the situation that they're in, because they just don't seem to care.
Or they'll charge you extra to go beyond their bounds. They have the Intercept service now that costs you like $14 for them to not put it on the truck.
Oh, I haven't even seen that.
Yeah, well, that's what I had to end up doing with one of the packages. They said that there was just absolutely no way they couldn't sort it, couldn't find it, and I came back to work actually, and I did the UPS Intercept to make sure they didn't put it on the truck the next morning, and I went and picked it up, but they charged me like $15 to do that. But it was the only way I could make sure I got my package in the morning, So, yeah. But I agree. It's like there's just a very distinct lack of caring, I guess, about the problems of their customers. So
right, and that's another thing that I don't like about dealing with them either is from a customer service perspective. Anytime you need to call them, like let's say like you have an issue that you need to have resolved only by your local office.
Right.
You still got to call that national 800 number, and then they'll like redirect you to your local office after like 3 transfers. And it's like, well, where's just the number of my local post office so I can just call? But that doesn't exist anymore, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Well, I must have got lucky because our post offices still have a local number.
Oh, well, you are. I guess you are lucky.
It didn't help, but that number still exists at least.
Good. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that. Just if I could go back a second, Zach, to your story about your incident management system. That's an issue that I actually have a lot of intimate knowledge with because, and John, I think, could comment to this too to some degree. When him and I were at Rider University many years ago, the last project that I worked on before I left Rider was we were in the process of selecting an incident management system to replace our homegrown ticketing system that we had for years.
Right.
And I was part of a delegation that was tasked with finding a solution. We had narrowed it down to 2. One was Remedy's Service Desk Express.
That's what we use at Amazon.
Okay, and then the other one we looked at was Parature, which is now I understand is owned by Microsoft. And Service Desk Express was what we ultimately went with, and I had to go to World Trade Center for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks, to be certified in Service Desk Express administration. They won't even install it or implement it until there is at least one person that is certified at the organization that's buying it. So as a customer, you can't even get it unless you have a certified person. And John, I'm sure you remember sitting in those open meetings in the library where there was minutes taken, and people were allowed to sit in the periphery of the meetings, but not allowed to contribute. It was a pretty bizarre experience, but ultimately they paid. I think the number was $125,000 or $150,000 for Service Desk Express, and they never ended up implementing it. They ended up outsourcing their after-hours help desk to a company called Presidium, which ended up getting bought by Blackboard. And Presidium, once you bought in with Presidium, you got free access to Parature, ironically. So our university ended up becoming a Parature house, and my understanding is it still is. And I got to say, I personally never used it, but my friends that remained behind had a lot of good things to say about Parature. So
I liked Parature a lot.
Yeah,
there was a very good chance for a little while there that I was going to be in charge of the help desk.
Yes.
I don't know whether we had that conversation, but
I do remember that time.
Yeah, such a long time ago. Anyway, one of the things that I was concerned about was making sure that Parature was everything that was supposed to be. And the problem with our help desk when we were there was that not a lot of great training was done. And I say that very sadly because there were a lot of great people who needed help. And I think that if I had had that opportunity, I might have been able to turn that around a little bit.
Yeah. So, Zach, when you go back to the drawing board, you might want to take a look at Parature. It's another cloud-based solution, and I think I think Microsoft, like I said, owns it now, and hopefully they still sell it.
Yeah, I took a look. It looks like it's still available. So
good. Glad to hear that. So
So,
that's go ahead, John. Sorry.
Sorry. There's just one more story, and I'm actually going to split it into two mini stories. And the first one is a great story of customer service, and the second one is a not so great. Matter of fact, I think I'll start with the not so great. I do a lot of consulting, and sometimes I do corporate consulting, but much more often I'm working with individuals. And sometimes those individuals just need help with computers and related electronics. And in this case, I have one client who's like 80 years old, and she has trouble just like using a tablet. And so I get together with her from time to time to go over like how to check her email or whatever. But she had been paying for a phone for months, a Jitterbug, right? One of those little like...
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And so anyway, the problem with it was she had tried to set it up a couple times and had trouble because she didn't understand that she absolutely had to make a phone call. And there were a lot of instructions that were contradictory to that. It would say things like, turn on your phone and see whether or not it auto-registers. If it doesn't, then call this number. And she didn't want to call the number because she figured that it was something she was doing wrong. And so anyway, when you actually make a phone call to this company to set up the phone, there's just all kinds of things that get in the way of it happening. And this was not Jitterbug. This was a representative company who sold these packages and like managed the connection to Jitterbug. So I don't mean to call out Jitterbug. I think they're doing a fine job and have a great business. But this company was a third party and did not really have, it seemed like there were not many people who were answering service calls. They didn't necessarily know what they were doing. And there was just a bunch of confusion about numbers and things that they'd have to work with all the time. And I had to feed them information rather than to be asked for the right question. And in most cases, I think in situations where the customer is more well-informed than the service, it's problematic. You know, and if you're not familiar with the materials and you are answering questions that are, you know, presented in the materials for a product, you have to have people who understand that. One of the things that we did at Rider University with Presidium, for example, was we went out there. The person in charge of the help desk and his manager and myself, possibly becoming a part of the organization, all went out to Presidium and told them about the specific issues that they would receive when the phone rang from Rider University. And I thought it was so useful, and they essentially had us present all day long, and whoever wanted to come in and listen to the presentation about Rider could do that. And I thought it worked very well. I don't know how much of it was retained.
Zero.
And,
I can speak from experience that it wasn't retained, it wasn't used. So again, as playing to Zach's point of you know, customer service facades, you know.
Yeah. So that was not a great experience, and that was just something that happened this week where at the end of the call I thought to myself, you're supposed to be helping people who are older. I mean, that's your whole business model, is these phones that have big numbers on them. And to ask them really technical questions, and this is not to make assumptions about older users of technology, but many users of technology who are up in age have some trouble reading and have some trouble hearing and have some trouble with, you know, visual details, and yet they're asked to do so much in order to make this product work. And meanwhile, she's paying for it every month. She's just not able to use the phone. So it was like, it's almost like a scam where they don't have to give any service at all, but yet, you know, they are still taking money. It was sad. So that's a bad example of customer service. The good example is a really good story. The situation is this. Let's say a major corporation, an organization in Mercer County, had to put up signs all over their campus. And the signs were details about how to get help. You know, sort of, you could think of it in the same way as like the blue lights, you know, around a university campus. But these signs were like, in the event that you need help in this particular way, this is the number that you call. So anyway, the project went on. It took like 6 months to implement these and get all the signs correct and blah, blah, blah. And then they were put up in preparation for the launch of this program. And after they were all up and so much effort had been put out, they realized that one of the numbers was wrong. And it was a phone number. And so if the person called the number on the sign, they wouldn't get the help that they wanted. They would get, a porn line somewhere or something. So they had an emergency where they had to cover up all the signs, and they had to get either replacements for the signs or a way to repair the signs. So anyway, they went back to the sign company, and they said, we made a mistake when we gave you the order for these signs, and we need to repair it. And the sign company could say, what? They could say, okay, we'll do it for you, but it's going to take a week. Or they could say, we'll do it, and we can have it for you by tomorrow, but it's going to cost you an extra, $1,000. Or they could say any other number of things. But what they said was, we will do it for you, we'll do it by tomorrow, and we'll do it for free.
Wow.
It was amazing. And this was a third party that told me about the situation, but it just stood out in my mind as like, you really understand. Even though you had the opportunity to make a quick buck, you resisted that opportunity and you made a lifelong customer.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about that type of business too, like printing and mailing is specifically, the markups on that service are usually so high. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, what does it cost a company that does a lot of high volume printing to run a batch of stickers that they can throw over the number to on the sign to correct it, or even run another batch of signs? At the end of the day, when you're dealing with a printing company or a printing service, you're typically paying for the design and the work that's being done. The materials are so insignificant to the cost that it's great that like you said, the person that runs that shop or that team made that decision, because at the end of the day, it really, in materials-wise, it doesn't cost anything to do.
It was probably pennies, but they could have charged $1,000 for the replacement.
Sure, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just a really good, feel-good sort of customer service example, I thought, and I was really happy that it just came up, and that I thought it would be a good story for us to tell.
That's a good one.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, in relation to your first story talking about Jitterbug, are you familiar with the userismymom.com?
No.
There is a guy, I believe he's a full-stack developer who has set up a website. The first one was theuserisdrunk.com, where he said he would vet your website, your UI, while drunk. But then he set another one up called The User Is My Mom, where he gets his actual mother to use people's website and gets UI input from his mom.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And it's something I think is really cool. I think it was, like we were talking about with Jitterbug, their target market being especially kind of some more elderly people, or people who may not necessarily be in sync with technology or what's going on. Like, I think services like this are as kind of tongue-in-cheek and fun as they are, I think that they'll become more important in the future. But yeah, I just thought it was neat. I didn't know if you'd heard of that yet.
I hadn't heard of it. I love that idea. I can't wait to check out the site.
Yeah,
it reminds me of a couple years ago. Florence Henderson, who you may remember was the mom on the Brady Bunch.
I sure do.
She was making the talk show rounds, promoting a company that she was the owner of called Flow Club. And Flow Club was a monthly service that you paid into as a senior citizen, and it was basically like a 24-hour technology help desk that seniors could call to get help with anything, whether it was smartphones or email or websites or anything at all. You'd pay this monthly fee, and you'd have access to Flow Club, and you'd dial in, and they would help you with your, they would do remote assistance and all kinds of other stuff. Sadly, Flow Club is no longer in business. I actually looked that up not that long ago. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see those. There is absolutely a niche for technology services that cater to seniors. I've even gotten, I don't know if you guys ever get on on Thursdays, that's when I get all my junk mail Thursdays in the mailbox. And, you get those, like, Valpak coupon envelopes and stuff. I remember I opened one up not that long ago, and there was a special touch-screen computer that was powered by Android. Some company bought these, like, 12-inch or 15-inch touch screens that were Android tablets, more or less, that were in the shape of a monitor, and they put, like, a custom Android skin on Android, and it was basically like a simplistic, idiot-proof, like, here's your web browser, here's your email interface for seniors, and it was large and high contrast, and I was, like, blown away. And of course, they were charging like $600 for it, and I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Well, it's funny. As I said, a lot of my clients are of this age and have concerns about what they can see on screen. And somebody said to me, I would need to get a tablet, but like when I look at them, everything's so small. And I said, well, that's editable, and I guess that's kind of my importance, going all the way back to this idea of the flexibility of the Echo versus the flexibility of something built in Raspberry Pi. Is like, if I don't like what the Echo does, what do I do?
Nothing. You can't do anything.
Right. Whereas, so the same thing is true of, like, Android, right? So we could take any tablet, like the tablet you just talked about, throw a launcher on top of it, and be able to make, two icons as big as possible on screen. Like, one is email, one is browser. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to do that for some of my clients because, like, that's all they need. So what do they need, 6 screens and, these tiny little icons for, if they just need to get to their browser and to email?
Right. That's a good idea. I was going to say... Oh, go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm a big advocate of Chromebooks for that target market also.
Me too.
I've recommended a great deal of Chromebooks to some of my friends, family members who are kind of elderly, and that's all they need is that basic browser function.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Chromebooks. Sean, how do you feel about Chromebooks?
It's funny you should ask me that because my sister and I just had a bitch fest about Chromebooks this weekend, and it was really great. My sister is a elementary school teacher, and her school is a Google school, and the two of us just wailed on how we both feel Chromebooks are pointless and useless. I feel as though Chromebooks had their time in the sun, so to speak, kind of in that era when the netbook died, and we were in need of low cost, good on battery life laptops. But since Intel has now kind of caught up to the advances of an ARM-based device in terms of power consumption and cost, you can now buy a very good Intel-based laptop that you could put Linux or Windows on. I'm only saying Linux because I'm just John's here.
Chromebooks run Linux, though.
They do. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, but not real Linux.
Oh,
and
real Linux.
You can if you want. You can if you want.
Yeah. Well, my point is that you could get hardware. Like for right now, you could go to the Microsoft store and buy an HP Stream for like $240, and the hardware in that laptop is going to be better than anything that's in a Chromebook. Heck, you could use that and put Chrome OS on it, and it would be better than any Chromebook that you would get for that price.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm saying that in addition to that, a Chromebook is good for what it is, which is just a Chromebook. Whereas
a $200 web browser.
It does, yeah. Well, it's a $200 web browser, but it's better than a traditional laptop because it's harder to break, it's harder to mess up, it's harder to steal, it's harder to. I mean, somebody can steal it, but they haven't stolen anything because all of my stuff is not on that machine.
Yeah, well, that's changing with Windows, my friend. So.
Stop.
With Windows, I mean, listen, it's just as easy now to put all your stuff in the cloud with Windows 8 and Windows 10 than it's ever been. So, cloud.
Solutions, but it's like if I wanted to run Windows anything, I would have difficulty doing it on low-powered hardware or for free.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, Windows 10,
the
I guess, is doing well
Windows 10 Developer Edition is interesting, but I have not seen it yet.
Well, I've been hearing nothing but great things from people that are big Raspberry Pi enthusiasts. There's also, the Minnow? The Minnow is another Are you familiar with that one, John?
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, that's also supported by that. So, but nothing but good things. I strongly recommend you check it out.
I will. I'll have to install Windows 10 Developer Edition. So that, I think, brings us to the end of the episode. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who are taking the time to watch and listen. And I want to especially thank Zach Skaggs for joining us and to talk about his experience with customer service and to share his feelings with you. And as always, I want to help to thank Sean for the great job that he does in this podcast. So
hey, before are you? I don't know. Are you in a rush, John? Are you trying to? You have an appointment?
I have about 13% left on my battery.
All right. Well, I wanted to just ask Zach a couple questions about.
Oh, good.
His world. You know, working. I mean, WP Ninjas is only one orbit removed from the WordPress mothership, and you're talking to two diehard WordPress guys, and I was curious as to what I remember just from the early tweets that you and I had exchanged, Zach, that you were kind of new to WordPress when you came to WP Ninjas. Is that right?
Yeah, and actually it's funny too because the new customer service people that we're hiring here also we're hiring on customer service skills, not on necessarily tech knowledge.
So I wanted to learn, what you've been doing to kind of bone up on WordPress, and how are your thoughts on the platform? Because it's not every day that John and I really get to talk to somebody who is a new power user, so to speak, of WordPress.
Right. Man, there's a lot there. There's a lot of things I really like, and then there's a lot of things that worry me about the platform going forward.
Oh, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think it's really going in the right direction as far as usability goes. I've worked on some people's sites who haven't updated since like 3.0, and I'm like, oh man, like it's come so far, But there are some things, in some ways, I think they're kind of getting away from some of their original design philosophies. We talk a lot about one of their philosophies being make decisions, not options. As one of the core design philosophies for WordPress. In some recent releases, they've duplicated features and added new. I know there's a lot of drama, for example, over the menu options being moved to the customizer.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of drama.
How the new post dialog is often pushing you towards their new design, which I think is like so childish and like lacks power. Yeah, I'm not crazy about some of the forceful decisions they're making right now.
Yeah, and some other things, general WordPress ecosystem, period, I guess, that are concerning. For me, for example, obviously I make my livelihood now on a WordPress product working here. So if WordPress sinks, we all sink, And Matt Mullenweg is, very much kind of against the paid plugin model.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of concerning. Some things have happened recently, with the acquisition of WooCommerce by Automattic.
I didn't know that. WooCommerce was purchased by Automattic?
WooThemes too, the whole lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we see stuff like that, it's a little bit concerning. Again, these are just my opinions, not necessarily our companies or anything. But that that kind of worries me a little bit because Automattic has so much control over WordPress core. They already, if you look at the plugins directory, right at the front, they have their featured plugins that have never changed in the last several years and are all automatic plugins,
Mm-hmm.
or Hello Dolly or something like that, So there's some things that kind of worry me, kind of in that vein. But overall, I think it's a great platform. I'm learning more and more as I'm kind of expanding my skill set, learning a little bit of development stuff, like how powerful it really is under the hood. There are a lot of people who believe, that it's the solution to, everything you would ever want to do, even remotely related to a CMS, and I don't know if that's the case.
It's the hammer to all nails sometimes.
Yeah, and it could be. I guess technically you could make it do all of those things if you wanted to, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not always the right choice.
Well, as somebody who is a firm who's fought those arguments that WordPress is a blogging platform and not a CMS, I can say that I would strongly disagree, and I used it at Princeton as our departmental CMS, where we ran three websites in a WordPress network, powered, self-hosted, the whole nine, and went under the hood, you know, tied it into our LDAP system. I mean, I've done insane things with WordPress, and a colleague of John and I's by the name of Ron Fitzwater has done even more insane things with his WordPress networks, and it is the be-all, it is the end-all. I still think there's a stigma attached to WordPress that it is a blogging platform, and in 2015, if you're still thinking that, I don't know, there's something wrong with you. You obviously don't know enough about WordPress.
We've actually talked to a lot of people that are coming back to WordPress. Maybe several years ago they worked, they tried to use it for, you know, a client project or something, and it just was not at all what they needed. And at a lot of the WordCamps that we've been to over the summer, we've run into a lot of people who are like, yeah, I tried it out again, and a lot's changed, and it's, you know, really is usable now. And yeah, so there's definitely, I mean, I think it's 23% of the internet right now.
Yeah.
Wow, I have not stayed on top of statistics ever with WordPress, so yeah, that's amazing to hear. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's a really big chunk.
I feel like it's an easy choice for most of my clients who want to do web development because it's easy enough to figure out if you know how to write an email. You know what I mean? Like if you can get somebody to the post dialog, that they understand what a subject line is, they understand what a body is, and they understand what send means. So it's like you can get into the details of SEO and get into the details of metadata, and you should. But at the first meeting of this system, they can make a post in a few minutes, and like that's beautiful for free.
Yeah, and I've actually a lady that I go to church with. I've been working on a website with her, and she very elderly. She's around 78, and she had been sending me a lot of emails back and forth, you know, asking me to make just really minor changes. And then all of a sudden, I got this email where she was so excited because she figured out how to log in, and she made the change on her own. And I gave her no direction on how to do that. She just found it and made the change, and she was so excited. I was really impressed too, you know. But that's your point. Yeah, it's very friendly. It's very easy for people to jump in and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear about your challenges and you know. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm so. It's not every day that I would say, a religious zealot for a certain platform. But I definitely am when it comes to WordPress. So I think I'm not as open to see the kind of cracks in the facade. And listen, you know, the paid model thing. You know, that I haven't stayed on top of the politics with WordPress, and I'm not intimately knowledgeable about, you know, the different disputes and battles going on. But the fact that Mullenweg and WordPress is against the paid theme and paid plugin model is not a surprise to me. But at the same time, it's disheartening because some of the I mean, I was a WooThemes customer for years when I used to do consulting, and I would design organizations' websites for pay. WooThemes was there to bail me out. I mean, they had amazing designs, and a lot of their paid plugins were good. And you know, WP Ninjas, the stuff that the products that they have are phenomenal. I used to use your form to plug in on one or two implementations back in the day. So you know, to hear that there's a bias against that you know, that ecosystem, that paid for ecosystem is a little upsetting. And you know, if I ever had an opportunity to speak to Mullenweg, I would say, like, bro, you know, like, let everybody have a taste. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's great to be the king, but you know, it's nice to have some knights and sirs at your table too. You know?
Yeah, and that's my concern. I think there's a lot of really good developers. I'm not one of them, but I think there's a lot of really good developers in the WordPress community who are becoming concerned. And maybe to me they're what makes up the community. They're what makes WordPress such a powerful platform.
Right.
And I think if their support ever gets lost, I think if anything happens to really alienate them, that's when I think it would really be downhill pretty quickly for WordPress at that point. So
I would agree. I mean, look at I don't know what your knowledge is about the history of blogging platforms, but Movable Type back in the early 2000s, late 90s was, I mean, I would strongly, if you're not familiar with Movable Type, check out the history of that because it's a phenomenal story. They were like the de facto blogging platform, and it was similar, like they were kind of an open source thing, and then they went to this like closed sourced paid for model, and it destroyed, like they overnight lost all their market share and domination in the marketplace. And I don't even. We had a movable type server at Princeton when I started in like 2008, 2009. They still had it, and then it was shut down. And I couldn't even believe that anybody even had them anymore. So I'm sure there are people out there that still have it. I'm sure it's like WordPerfect, it is something you could still buy. But who uses it, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I would, like I said, you bring up good concerns, and I would recommend if you're interested to read about Movable Type and the trials and tribulations they went through, because it was another phenomenal platform that people loved and supported, and it was great. And then, like I said, overnight they made these business decisions, and then they lost all their goodwill, and the platform went away. And WordPress, that could be WordPress.
Yeah, and I think WordPress is doing really good right now. The WordPress Foundation, Automatic. I definitely think their intentions are great, and I think they're still doing really well. It's just I can see where in the future there could be potential for problems. So that's kind of where I'm a little bit reserved about it. But
yeah. Well, I mean, that's one good thing about the WordPress community is you do have an opportunity to voice your opinion, and the community has an opportunity to kind of weigh in. I remember on different features in the past that were implemented and then undone in subsequent versions. So I think there is an opportunity for you to be heard on that platform at the very least. WordPress.com is their closed, paid-for version, and they can do the changes that they want there. And a lot of times they kind of make the changes in the .org version, the self-hosted version, because it's easier for them. But they've undone some of that stuff after enough people complain. So maybe one day it'll be a lot. Not that much of a concern as it is today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for talking about that. I'm always fascinated by people that are able to make their living by doing anything with WordPress. Like I said, it's something I used to do. I didn't make a living. It was a side business for me, and you're way further up the stream than I was in the WordPress world. So it's cool to hear your perspective. I did have the pleasure of speaking with somebody who worked at Automatic at a WordCamp in Philadelphia once, and so it's nice to hear your perspective and your thoughts, especially as a newcomer to the platform. And I hope you learn to love it as much as John and I do.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely love it. It's great. And Automatic, man, they're awesome. Anytime I've ever met one of their people, they've been just top notch. So yeah, they're really great.
I've been trying to get John to do a WordCamp with me here in our area for years, and
we went to a WordCamp together. Actually,
we went to it, but as I've talked about us doing our own here in the Mercer County area, and if we ever pull that off, Zach, we need a promise that you and maybe some of your ninjas will come down and grace us with your presence.
Yeah, we would definitely do that. I think at least me, I would. I'll commit to that. We're trying to get one started down here in Chattanooga as well. So.
Well, if you do, let John and I know. Maybe we can make a road trip.
Definitely.
That would be pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. All right, John. So we can. I think we can wrap it up now. I know you probably have about 5% of battery left right now, right?
I went and got my plug and plugged it in.
If only you had a Chromebook, you'd have some of that extra battery life.
If I had a Chromebook, this would not be a problem, Sean.
Oh, I thought that the low-quality webcam was letting us know that you were using a Chromebook.
No, I'm using a MacBook Air.
Oh, that's even worse.
Well, at least I have all the features of Google Hangouts. If I was on Linux, for whatever reason, they're missing some things. So, at any rate, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody who's involved tonight. Thank you especially to Zach for taking some time out to hang out with us knuckleheads and talk about some fun stuff. And thank you all for tuning in. Sean, any final words?
No, this is kind of special for me because we don't have many guests on our show, and that's kind of been by design. And Zach found us. I don't even know how Zach really did find us. Tell us the story.
Yeah, I was actually I live in Chattanooga. My family is in Ohio, and I was driving that long, 8-9 hour drive, and trying to figure out what I want to do. And I was like, I want to listen to some podcasts. Let's find some customer service podcasts. There are no customer service podcasts. The closest thing I found was some guy promoting his book. He basically read like the first paragraph of every chapter of his book and called it a customer service podcast. But then I saw the customer and the service. I was like, well, maybe that's a customer service podcast. I'll try it. And started listening to it. And no, I loved it. It was great. I love hearing the stories of good and bad customer service you guys have had, because it helps me to think through, as someone who provides customer service. It gives me good reminders, kind of on things. But yeah, it was totally just by accident. I was looking for a customer service podcast, and you guys are it. So
sweet.
That's awesome.
I was so happy to hear that.
Yeah, and it's, a lot of times when we do this show, I mean, it could just be literally John and I, and nobody listening, and it wouldn't change my enthusiasm for it, because it's an opportunity for John and I to get together and talk about things that we're really passionate about. But the fact that you found us was like a really great reminder that the internet is an amazing place, and people can stumble upon the work that you do on the internet. And so I'm so grateful that you found us, and that you even reached out to us was. I mean, I remember that day that you tweeted at me, and I was like, "What is going on?" So, again, thank you for listening, and I know you've spread the word, and it's really awesome to have a guy like you in our family, so to speak. So, I hope this is the first of many conversations that we can have.
Oh yeah, I hope so too. That'd be awesome. And thank you guys for creating this. Thanks.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a great night, and we'll be back soon. I'm sure, probably a month or so.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for tuning in. See you all later.
All right, see you. Thanks again, Zach.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you guys. Bye.